Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome again with one more video lecture. Dear students, in the previous lecture I had discussed about the properties of soil. Today my lecture is about soil formation. Dear students, for the formation of a few centimeters of soil, it takes thousands of years. Okay, few centimeters of soil are formed by the slow and stepwise processes which takes about thousands of years. That process is known as weathering. Okay, weathering is the process by which formation of soil takes place. We can define weathering. It is a process of disintegration of rocks on the surface of the earth by the exposure of natural processes like rock, air, winds, water, etc. Okay, what is weathering? The breaking down of rocks is known as weathering. Simply we can say that the breaking down of rocks is known as weathering. How does this breaking down of rocks takes place? It takes place in different ways. Dear students, weathering is the process of disintegration of rocks on the surface of earth by the exposure to the natural processes like air, winds, water, and etc. These processes come in the category of physical weathering. Or we can say when the weathering takes place by any chemical changes. When the chemical changes are involved in the weathering, that weathering is known as chemical weathering. So we can say that there are different types of processes by which weathering takes place. Or we can say different types of agents are there by which weathering takes place. They may be physical agents, they may be chemical agents. Okay? So there are two types of weathering. First, that is physical weathering. Second, that is chemical weathering. What is physical weathering? Physical weathering is the process of breaking down of rocks into smaller pieces. It is the breaking down of rocks into smaller pieces by physical agents. These changes do not involve any characteristic change in the original rock. When physical weathering takes place, there is not any characteristic change in the original rock. Okay? These are caused by the temperatural changes or by the frost. Physical weathering, they may be occur due to temperatural changes or they may occur due to frost. Second, that is chemical weathering. Chemical weathering is the process which exists of the minerals are broken down into mineral components. The existing rocks or the existing minerals, they are broken down into mineral components. Okay, so we can say that the process of weathering in which the chemical changes are involved is called chemical weathering. Okay, the process in which the chemical changes are involved, that process is known as chemical weathering. Okay, in this kind of weathering, in the chemical weathering, the minerals break down into new mineral components. And chemical weathering, what is happening, the minerals, they break down into the mineral components which are caused by the weathering agents like by water. Dear students, we know that huge pieces of rocks begin to break near the surface due to physical or the chemical weathering. These small rocks continue to weather away due to different weathering agents. The weathering agent may be air, the weathering agent may be winds, there may be temperature change or the frost. Okay, this makes the layer of very small rock particles on the surface of earth. Okay, we know that the earthworms dig burrows which acts as a tunnel through which water crosses, and this burrows that are dug by the earthworms not only help us in weathering but also gives pathway to the roots of the plants. Okay, earthworms also help us in the decomposition of minerals, animal products and the plant products. Okay, the plants and the animals, they are broken down into smaller pieces, or they are broken down to form humus by bacteria or sometimes by other microorganisms. Okay, that humus then gets added to the soil and makes soil fertile, and when the minerals and the humus seep down into the soil with water, and thus that soil becomes ready for the plantation. These are the two types of weatherings. First, that is physical weathering. Second, that is chemical weathering. In physical weathering, there is not any characteristic change in the rock. In chemical weathering, which existed the minerals that get broken down into mineral components. Okay, dear students, there are different factors which are responsible for the weathering. Different factors are there. The factors may be physical factors or the factors may be chemical factors which are responsible for the process of weathering or for the process of soil formation. First, that is temperatural change. What happens due to temperatural change? We know that heat expands rocks while the rocks are contract on being cooled. When it is cooled, when the temperature is very less, the rocks are contract, and when it is heat, the rocks are expanded. The heat of the sun makes the surface layer of the rocks expanded more than the lower layer. Okay, due to heat, what happens? The upper surface of the rocks that are expanded, and the lower surface of the rocks that are not expanded. These changes causes the weathering of the rocks. Due to high heat, due to high temperature, weathering of rocks takes place. Okay, this is one of the factors due to which weathering takes place. Due to temperatural changes, weathering takes place. Due to high temperature, the upper surface of the rock that get expanded. Dear students, water also plays an important role in the process of weathering. The abrasive effects of continuously flowing of water, the effects of rains also cause the rocks to wither away. We know that due to powerful flow of water that breaks down the bigger rocks into smaller rock particles, that breaks down the bigger stones into the smaller stones. Okay, so we can say that water also is one of the factors for the process of weathering. One more factor, that is frost. What is frost? A deposition of a small white crystals formed on the ground or other surfaces when the temperature falls below freezing. When the temperature is below freezing, a deposition of small white crystals formed on the ground, okay, and other surfaces formed on the ground or on any other surface. When the temperature, that small ice crystal surface that is deposited due to the below freezing temperature, that is known as frost. This frost also plays an important role in the process of weathering. We know that the rainwater gets trapped into the surfaces of rocks, okay, and due to the low temperature in the winters, the water freezes in them and becomes ice. When the rainwater which get trapped in those surfaces of rocks due to low temperatures, that becomes ice. That ice exerts pressure on the rocks, Okay, that ice exerts pressure on the rocks and expanding by expanding, and due to this the surfaces of the parent rocks open and the process of weathering starts. Okay, so we can say that this frost also plays an important role in the process of weathering, or by the frost weathering takes place. What happens? The red water which gets trapped into the surfaces of rocks due to low temperature, due to freezing temperature, that rainwater which are in the those surfaces of rocks, which are in the surfaces of rocks, that gets freeze, that becomes ice due to low temperature, and that ice exerts pressure on those rocks by expanding, and due to this the surface of the parent rocks open and the process of weathering starts. Some other factors like wind that also playing an important role in the process of weathering. Blowing winds also have abrasive effects. Blowing winds, they have also an abrasive effects on the surface of rocks causing weathering. Living organisms, we know that living organisms, both animals, plants, and some microorganisms, they also play important role. That when living organisms are involved in the weathering, that weathering is known as biological weathering. What is biological weathering? Biological weathering is a weathering caused by plants and animals. Plants and animals releases acid forming chemicals. Okay, in plants and animals, in both of them there are the acids present. We know that nucleic acids are present, whether it is DNA ribonucleic acid or RNA ribonucleic acid. Okay, plants and animals release acid forming chemicals that cause weathering and also contribute to the breaking down of rocks and landforms. Okay, acids produced by certain living organisms growing on the surface of rocks causes corrosion on that surface. Okay, when acids they are produced by the living organisms, by those living organisms which are growing on those rocks, they cause corrosion of the surface. Living organisms living in the fine particles of the corroded rocks die, and due to action of the microorganisms, the dead bodies of those living organisms, whether the living organism is plant or the animal, okay, those microorganisms, by their action the dead bodies get converted into the humus. Thus more soil is formed due when that humus get added to the soil. This weathering is called biological weathering. So we can say that there are three types of weatherings: physical weathering, chemical weathering, and biological weathering. Physical weathering is due to physical agents, chemical weathering is due to chemical agents, and biological weathering is due to living organisms. And different factors are there which are responsible for the process of weathering. Wind is one of the factor, frost is one of the factor, water is also, and temperatural changes also play an important role in the process of weathering.